They told him going to the hospital was voluntary, but then they tased him when he tried to leave. Court is in session. A Colorado grand jury indicted multiple members of the Costilla County Sheriff's Office, including the sheriff, the undersheriff, and the sheriff's son, over 2 separate incidents. One involved the alleged mishandling of human remains, and the other, and to me the much more serious one, involved a man in a mental health crisis. According to reporting, deputies spent hours trying to calm him down after he held a razor-edged hunting arrow to his neck. Eventually, he dropped it and went with them to the sheriff's office. So far, that looks like crisis intervention. Then the case turned, because according to indictment summaries, nobody told him he was under arrest. Nobody told him he was not free to leave, but they did tell him going to the hospital would be voluntary. And when he didn't want to stay, he turned to leave. And that's when deputies allegedly hit him with tasers, and he ended up on the pavement with broken ribs. And this is where the case gets dangerous for the department, because this is not some obscure legal technicality. This is basic. If a hospital trip was voluntary, then the moment he changed his mind, the deputies had 2 choices: either let him leave or make it crystal clear he was now going to be lawfully detained. What they do not get to do is create this gray zone where a man thinks he is there voluntarily, right up until the moment he tries to walk away. That is exactly the kind of contradiction juries hate. And it gets worse. According to witness accounts summarized in the reporting, he was unarmed, walking away, and not acting aggressively when force was used. If that is true, then the force ladder starts to collapse, because a taser is not a magic do what I say button. It is force. And if you use force on an unarmed man for doing what a free person thinks he can do, leave, that starts looking less like control and more like punishment. If you like crime stories where we actually test what happens to power when it meets justice, subscribe. Now back to the case. And to be fair, the defense does have a real argument. This was not a calm sidewalk encounter. This was a man in crisis who had earlier been suicidal and armed with a hunting arrow. That matters, because they will argue officers are allowed more room when they are dealing with someone unstable, unpredictable, and potentially dangerous to himself or others. So the defense will say this was not abuse, this was crisis containment. That is their best argument. But it still runs into one brutal problem. If this was dangerous enough to use force, then why keep telling them that going to the hospital was voluntary? Now let's cross-examine this. Deputies, you told him that going to the hospital was voluntary. Your word that you used. Voluntary. So let's walk through this and find out what voluntary actually means. He can refuse, right? If it's voluntary. He can walk out the door if it's voluntary. You do not get to taser him down on the ground if it's truly voluntary. Now into this. When he turned away from you, he wasn't arrested. He wasn't charged. He wasn't carrying a weapon, right? He wasn't even committing any crime. What turned a voluntary encounter into a force encounter in that moment? Because that's where your legal protection disappears. Not earlier, not when he had the arrow, right then and there, when he walked away. And that's the moment a jury is going to lock into. Now my ruling. Yes, some of this indictment may be overcharged. The human remains count, for instance. I can see where a defense argument lives there. But the taser indictment is different. That one has real teeth. Because if the facts are true, this was not just bad policing. This was law enforcement using force first and finding out legal justification second. That is where departments get in real trouble, because the public will tolerate mistakes, but they will not tolerate this when the badge starts making up the rules as it goes. This is Crimes Digest. If you want more cases cross-examined this way, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next episode.